Greetings and welcome to the Barbra Gentry-Pugh Show. I'm excited that you were able to join us today. And I have as my special guest, Shirley A. Williams. Shirley, it's just good to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Barbara.
Yes, I met Shirley several years ago. A good friend of ours, Deborah Jones, who's going on to be with the Lord, introduced us.
Yes.
And at that moment, it was just amazing to see such a poised, intelligent, professional lady. And I just, it was just a pleasure meeting you.
Likewise.
We had something in common. We had recently both lost our husbands.
Mm-hmm.
And Deborah thought it'd be nice if we meet, and here we are today.
That's right. And that was several years ago,
Yes.
and there was a chemistry there that,
Yes.
told me that we would be friends for a while.
Yes. It's a pleasure to know you, Shirley, and I mean that from my
Yes.
heart because,
Likewise.
yes, you're just such a wonderful person inside and out.
Thank you so much.
And you have so much to offer. And we're going to be sharing some of that today with our audience. And just like to introduce Shirley to our audience. She is the president and CEO of Leadership in Action. And after reading your website and your bio, you are in action. You are a leader.
Well, I try to keep moving.
Keep moving. And she had so many wonderful things to share with us today. And I'm really interested in leadership. I think sometimes we are lacking in that area, in many areas, whether it's in the secular world or if it's even in the church.
Exactly.
Sometimes we lack the skills to be a good leader.
And the skills are transferable. They really are. The same leadership skills that are required in a corporate environment are also those same leadership skills that can apply in the faith-based community, because what happens is that the principles don't change. It's just the people that are carrying forth the organization's mission, goals, and vision. And so the same skill set is required, be it faith-based or in corporate America.
Amen. Shirley she's had 20 years of experience in human resources. And I know a little bit about human resources, and that is a very interesting field. And you meet all kinds of people and interact with all kinds of situations. So Shirley is prepared to share and meet just about any challenge when it comes to leadership and action. So Shirley, tell us a little bit about what you do, some of the things you have to offer in your workshops and all the things that you do.
Well, the one thing that I do is pretty much really try to empower women so that they understand that they have that same leadership potential that our male counterparts have. Oftentimes we are a little more nurturing and we allow our emotions to come into play, whereas men, they operate more on a task-oriented basis. And so that's the only thing, is that there's nothing wrong with being nurturing, because that is a requirement when we're leading, because you want people to feel that they're cared for, because then what that does is that motivates them to follow your lead. But men, when they're in leadership, they're more task-oriented. So what I do in my workshops is I try to incorporate the task and the nurturing piece of it, because what I can say based on my experience is that it was easier for me to follow a leader that I had respect for, a leader that I knew would roll their sleeves up when the going got tough, and to lead by example. That is the most critical piece, be it male or female.
I can kind of relate to that. When I got out of nursing school, being a registered nurse, it just all automatically put you in the position of being in charge. And I was night supervisor at this hospital. Had never been in charge of that many people. Didn't interview for the job. Didn't want the job. And I learned the hard way how to be a leader. But I think I did pretty well, because we had a good crew.
Yes.
If we want to call them a crew, a good.
Yes.
And we really worked really well together. But I have a question. What do you feel a leader is born, or are they, so to speak, made?
It's interesting, because you hear that question put to people very often, and it's like some people, it depends on who you're reading. Some people believe that it is innate, that the leader is within. And then there are also people who believe that you can develop. And basically, that person has to have a willingness for learning, a willingness. And, you know, my dad used to always tell me growing up, be a leader, not a follower. But as I grew older, what I realized is that a leader also has to be a follower first.
Exactly.
And they have to be able to understand that we're in it for the team. And what happens is that when we demonstrate to people, I think that what happens is just like our children, a leader who is strong can empower someone who may not be as strong as them on the leadership front, as long as they're leading by example. They have to be.
Exactly.
One of my vice presidents that I used to report to, she used to really hammer a lot of the leaders because she would always say, you have to model the behavior. And that really stuck with me because we do have to model the behavior. And I think that when we make people feel appreciated, when we make people feel that there's equal ownership, okay, that we all own the outcome, then the people become more motivated. And being in human resources, some of the things that I've seen work, you know, like a lot of people always think that it's about the money, but it's not. It's about the respect. It's about the trust. It's about me feeling that I contributed to the overall goal and that leader making me feel as I did contribute.
And that has really carried over into corporate America. And I know that the big three at some point decided, you know, that they wanted them to be shareholders.
Exactly.
Had a voice in what happened.
And that whole thing came out of it, not to get all technical in that, but you hear people speak about Six Sigma and ISO at a time, and the Malcolm Baldrige. See, I worked for companies that promoted that, where excellence was the end-all result, and that meant that the subordinates had to mirror who I was, because I realized that Shirley did not accomplish anything. You know, one of the books that I co-authored, it's about diversity. And it's about diversity, how we need to apply it to leadership. And that was one of the things that I talked about, how people made fun of our president, Barack Obama, and said that he told Governor Romney, you didn't build that. The message that he was trying to convey is that none of us in a leadership role, and even let's take leadership, not looking at it from a corporate or from a faith-based standpoint, but just in our homes. Okay? We don't build anything totally alone if there's a unit involved. It takes the energy, it takes the imagination, and it takes the desire for this to come to pass from everyone who's involved.
You know, I often have seen over the years when a male is a leader versus a female is a leader, the male seems to he just sort of commands more respect than the female. What's that all about?
It's interesting you asked that, because my very first job that was in what we call the professional arena was, you probably have heard of the company, National Cash Register it used to be, but then they changed it to NCR Corporation. And I went and applied for a job there. My desire was to go into sales. And that was like at a time when you did not see a lot of women of color and very few men of color in the arena of sales. And so when I came in, they felt that I would be an excellent person to be a secretary. And that perhaps, and this was when EEOC was real big, and so they felt perhaps you could get your foot in the door and we can promote you. Well, it was not happening at the pace that I thought it should happen. And if some of my colleagues from back then were here, they would tell the story about how they all laughed at me because I was a secretary to about 8 men. And I would type something, and one of the guys used to always laugh, and he still, when he sees me to this day, he says, I remember when you would type something and give it back to us. If we dropped it on the floor, it made a thud because it was so much white out on it. Because I'm not today, nor was I back then, a typist. However, I wanted to get into sales, and it was one of the sales managers came to me and he said, do you know what's keeping you from getting into sales? He said, because you've got everything that it takes. He says, but if you want to go into sales, you've got to hang out with the people you want to become.
Wow.
He said, you're going to lunch with the secretaries. Now, don't get me wrong. There was nothing, in my opinion, wrong with that. But what he said to me is, you need to find a way to insert yourself into that group that you want to become a part of.
Wow.
So then I started going to lunch with the salespeople. And over a course of years, well, months really, it wasn't even years, but over a course of about a year and a half, they forgot I was not one of them. And then when there was an opening, every one of those men, and I tell people today, my style, I will tell you, is masculine because that's who my mentors were.
Okay.
And so once again, I said we model the behaviors. And so my style when it came to selling was a little more aggressive than some of the other women in the organization. But I got that position only because I followed his advice. And you know, like they tell you, you soar with the eagles. If you want to be an eagle, you can't hang out with the ducks, right? So I carried that through all my life. And so every position that I ever had, I made sure that I positioned myself in
that area.
The area that I wanted, that I had my eye on.
Okay. Wow. Well, I know you do some wonderful workshops, and tell us about some of the workshops that you do in terms of team building and leadership and training and the behavioral. I wanted you to tell our audience what DISC means. That behavioral DISC.
It's called the DISC. We call it DISC, which is a discovery system
that
helps us to understand our personalities and the personalities of others that we are surrounded by. Because what we find is that if I understand what makes me tick, what are my needs when we're having a conversation, for me to totally understand what you're asking of me, DISC enables you to interpret people and their behaviors. And so DISC stands for like a dominant personality. Okay. And then we have what we call the intuitive personality or inspiring personality. And then we have C, and that's what they call courageous, or the person who is DISC, I said, is dominant. Your C personality is a person who just wants the facts, ma'am, just the facts. Don't give me a lot of fanfare. Your I personality is a person who needs to have a conversation. You need to make them feel good. If you want to have a party, they're the person that would be right there telling you, here's how we should do the party. And then the S personality is a supporting person. That's a person who comes in. Oftentimes, they're taken for granted because they're a little more subdued and whatnot. But they're the person that if you want to get something done, they're going to be the people that's going to pull the pieces together for you. And so that's where the DISC comes from. It's a description of the various personalities. And so what I do in my training and team building is the first thing that a good team understands is what my role is. How do I contribute to the overall win? And so by taking these personalities and understanding that this is what the D needs to operate at their full capacity, this is what the I needs, from communication to what types of assignments you should give them. All of that is reflected in the personality, and it also then sort of heightens the opportunity for a greater success rate.
So it's important for the leader to know her people.
Exactly.
To get the best results.
Exactly.
For them to reach their potential.
Exactly. And that's what the DISC provides, is a picture of who's on your team. the gentleman that trained me and certified me in DISC, he worked with someone who passed last year. His name was Zig Ziglar, and you know, he is he was a motivator extraordinaire, and he tells the story about, I think it was the Dodgers baseball team. They were losing all of these games and they couldn't understand why. And so what happened was they realized that everybody in there had the D personality. And a D personality is a person who is very strong-willed, and it's like, do what I say do. I'm the boss kind of thing. You know, they're very dominant. And so what happened was they had a team that was comprised of mostly dominant personalities, which meant that you didn't have anyone that wanted to do a supporting team. So he went in and he did this assessment on the team, and actually they then mixed things up a bit and started recruiting different personality types.
Wow.
And then they went on to start winning the league. In fact, he has a big old, one of those big, like like a Super Bowl ring, but that's not what they call it, I'm sure, in baseball. But that's what the whole thing is. It's important, personalities, to understand. And it also helps in the family. If we understand, my husband and I, it helped to understand if he's communicating with me, for him to really understand what it is I need, then I need to present it this way. And that's what the DISC does.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And I think even if we carried that over in relationships,
that's it.
We'd have better relationships.
Exactly, and that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
It works in a corporate environment. It works in a faith-based environment. We even have profiles that tells you who certain personalities are as far as famous people go. And then we have one that's designed for faith-based, which tells you what Jesus's personality was and all the disciples.
Wow.
You know, and then if you look at it, you can see the coming together and see what made them such an effective team.
You know, a lot of times, either in the faith-based community or in the secular community, you know, people are chosen to be leaders and haven't had the appropriate training
that's
for the greatest success.
That is the key.
And you really need to understand.
Whether you're born or developed into a leader, you need the training.
So you think it's a combination of both. That's a little bit of innate and a little bit of being developed as a leader. So can anybody that desire to be a leader, or could you have?
I would say the key word that you used was desire.
Desire, okay.
Because everyone does not want to lead.
That's true.
And so if they have a desire and you give them the appropriate tools and you put in place, once again, a mentor or someone who is a coach. See, that's another big thing that I'm into is the coaching, because just like a baseball team or a football team, they may be great players, but the coach helps them to really hone in on what their critical talents are. And that's really all that a coach does, is we help that person who might not have been your choice as a strong leader. And then sometimes I will say, miss the call and think that a person is a great leader because they have a big mouth and they're doing all the talking.
Yes.
But a lot of times those people really are just pontificating, and I hate to use the word bully, but in a lot of cases they've been bullies all their life, and a bully is not always a good boss because once again, if I have someone who is barking orders out to me, I may do my job just enough to get by. But if I've got someone who makes me feel like I'm adding value to that organization and to the overall mission, and that I matter and that I'm important to the team, that's the person that I'm going to go above and beyond for. And those are the skills when we talk about developing leaders. That's what needs to be developed, is that you need to make people feel valued.
You know, we've been around a long time and we've seen all kinds of people in all kinds of situations. And I think what I've seen was a lot of people that talk a lot, bullies, or, you know, those that bark out orders. It's a cover-up for the insecurity.
It is.
It really is.
It really is. And then you have the leader who is always standing there and they're telling the big ideas and the big vision, but they don't have the spirit of an open mind to then listen to what other people say. And so they never get those big dreams, those big visions off the ground, because they're making it about I, and this is what I did, and this is how I do it. And so what happens is the talent that you have surrounded yourself with, they decide, well, they've got it all together. Have you ever seen those leaders where, you know, they're talking about all these awesome things that they're going to get done, and at the end of the day, when it doesn't happen, then it becomes, well, so-and-so didn't follow through in that. But that's because they fail to delegate. And, you know, delegation to me is just another word for inclusion.
You know, I was going to ask you that because some people really have problems. And I think if I be honest, I used to have a little bit of a problem because if they wasn't doing it right or the way I thought it should be done, then I'd just go and do it myself.
There you go. Only I can do it right.
But you eventually learn. I know one thing that helped me to be a leader when I was the night supervisor of the hospital. Didn't know quite what I was doing initially, but only by the grace of God. But the fact that the director of nursing set me down, Barbara, you can do it, made me feel that I could do it, made me feel valued in the hospital. So that is so important.
Feeling valued is critical.
Valued.
Yes, yes.
And her belief in me.
Right.
And I didn't want to let her down. And so I kind of learned to develop, and I think God just kind of helped me along.
And again, it goes back to, and I keep saying that all of these skill sets are interchangeable no matter what the environment is. Look at faith-based, how people want to recruit from the congregation. And then these are people sometimes who are highly functioning people in some real key roles in organizations. However, the church does not value, they say they do, or trust that they can do it, because once again, if I don't do it, it's not going to be right. Okay, and that's the mentality that we have to get away from. And one thing about, as I said earlier, being mentored by men is that men very rarely have a problem letting go. It's the women in leadership. A man expects that if I told you to do something, and I use the word told because that's the way a lot of times they operate. And see, because women have that natural maternal instinct, we ask. We don't tell, but we don't ask forcefully enough, okay? And I think the asking, I still say that I believe that if you have a style of asking, that you get more done, and people will rise to a higher level when you do.
And empower them.
Exactly.
And encourage them. But you believe that they can do it, and that person, if he's the right kind of person, don't want to let you down.
No, that's it. And when I remember I had one team that worked for me. This was when I was in the staffing industry, and I had an office in the Renaissance Center, and it was really interesting because, you know, in the Renaissance Center they had all these little places you could go and get lunch in that. And they would always come and say, Shirley, we're going down for lunch. Can we bring you something back? And so I always made it a habit that I would force myself. I actually wrote it on my calendar. Once a month, I would get up before they had a chance to come into my office, and I would say, guys, I'm going downstairs to get lunch today. Can I bring anybody anything back? They just thought that was awesome. Just me offering to bring their lunch back for them today, instead of me sitting here like the big boss and letting them always come to me and bring me my lunch, you know. And so something as small as that made them want to work harder, and they had my back, you know. Anything went wrong in that office, or if a client called in, they were real quick to respond. So, you know, I'm grateful for what I learned from the men, but I'm also grateful for that little femininity that I have that complemented it. You know, I never forgot what it felt like to be a woman in an environment where it was mostly men.
You know, in the arena that I've had most of my leadership was, you know, in charge in a hospital or whatever. But I worked probably harder than anybody else
Exactly.
because I was working with them.
Exactly.
And as long as they didn't see me giving orders,
Exactly.
but in there with them doing it.
Yes.
Because my philosophy was, we're going to get the work done and we can all take a break.
Yes.
But
Yes.
until then, we're going to all work together
Yes.
to get it done. So.
And one of the other areas that that I do a lot of training and speaking on is the reinventing yourself piece of it, which was really my very first stab at trying to get into the training and development industry. And I realized that there was a need for reinventing yourself. And I realized that because, once again, from a corporate job. See, everything that I have, that I pour back out, that is something that was poured into me from the various corporate jobs that I had. And I do believe that what was poured into us, that we can share it with other people. And I especially believe that we should reach back and share it with the generations to follow.
Absolutely.
Because we are not mentoring to them the way that we should be. We have formed this opinion that they don't want to learn from us and they can't learn from us and they're just disrespectful. But I always say, respect is earned. It is not a given.
Right.
It's earned. And if we show that we respect them, and we respect them by passing on the wisdom that we have learned from those different experiences, life experiences, then what we're doing is, that's our legacy that we're bringing. But one of the things that I talk about is the reinventing yourself and how we have to reinvent ourselves as far as how we interact with that generation that's coming behind us.
Shirley, you have so much to offer.
Thank you.
Such a valuable service. I just think if we all learned more about leadership, we would be better leaders.
Exactly.
And our time is getting away from us. You are an author. Tell us quickly about the organization that you're a part of. You're part of several organizations.
Right.
But the one that...
the publishing company that I'm involved with is Professional Woman Publishing. And through them, I never thought I was an author, but through them, I have had the privilege and the opportunity to do 15 books. A few of them I have brought here today.
Wonderful.
And they touch on various aspects of leadership. Barbara, thank you again for having me. As you can see, I have a lot of energy and I talk real fast, but thank you so much. This was exciting.
Oh, it's just amazing. Every time we talk, we just go on and on. So you're going to have to come back.
Well, we
very
will do
soon
that.
Because we need to talk about some of the books that you've written. We need to talk about some of the other experiences that you've had so that our audience can benefit from all that you have to offer.
My pleasure. Look forward to it.
I look forward to having you back real soon, Shirley.
Thank you again.
Real soon.
Okay.
This has been the Barbara Gentry-Pugh Show. Thank you for tuning in. May God bless you, and thank you. Bye-bye.